This video will not be a strict reading order. There are plenty of those online. This will be a guide with what you may want to read before certain books, and if there's any required readings, as well as where to start your journey if you have not already. Hello World Hoppers, welcome to Cosmere Horizons, your one-stop shop for everything Cosmere. If you are new to Brandon Sanderson's work, the Cosmere can be a daunting thing. This video will be a good base of information, but if you have any specific questions and don't want to risk getting spoiled on the internet, there's a Q&A section in the Cosmere Horizons Discord. We have a great community over there. I absolutely love hanging out on the Discord. The biggest piece of advice I can give to you is read whatever sounds interesting to you. I can only think of one crossover that improved my enjoyment of a book. The second piece of advice is to read this one last. For the first part of the video, I'm going to discuss what I think are the 6 best entry points to the Cosmere, and they're in no particular order. First up is Brandon Sanderson's magnum opus, The Stormlight Archive. These are massive books. There will be a total of 10 in the series, and there are currently 5 released, with the most recent being Wind and Truth, coming out a few months ago in December of 2024. It's the big brick right here. So big. If you want a fantasy epic with each entry over 1,000 pages and an author that is committed to keeping his releases coming, it is hard for me to go into specifics without spoiling. However, you will follow a vast range of characters through an ever-evolving world as new conflicts arise. The world of Roshar is one where we get so much slice of life. We get to fall in love with these characters, see what makes them whole, and it's my personal favorite series in the Cosmere, and that sentiment is shared by a lot of other people. As for what is important to read before this series, I'm gonna say nothing. Once you finish Way of Kings, if you want to plow all the way through these massive books, you are more than welcome to do so. However, if you're looking for a palate cleanser, it would not hurt to read Warbreaker. In the Stormlight Archive, definitely not the first book, but in later books, there are a few characters that cross over. However, it'll never be relevant that they are from a different series. Once or twice, they'll do something unexplained, and readers of Warbreaker will understand, but it will not change your enjoyment of the Stormlight Archive. But if you're gonna read anything before Stormlight, or even as a palate cleanser between the books, read Warbreaker. To segue us right into the second book I'd recommend starting with, Warbreaker. Warbreaker is a standalone book in the Cosmere with absolutely no required or even recommended readings. The story follows 2 sisters. The oldest sister, Vivenna, has spent her entire life preparing to be shipped away to another nation to be married to an all-powerful, infamous god king for political reasons. The youngest daughter, Ciri, has spent most of her life frolicking in the field and playfully living life. At the last minute, however, their father decides that he loves Vivenna too much, and so he sends his other daughter. That's so messed up. So he instead sends Ciri to go marry the king of another nation. Vivenna finds herself without purpose, and Ciri finds herself way over her head. If that sounds interesting to you, give it a read. It's a very colorful book. Okay, next we have the one everyone's gonna tell you to read first, including Brandon Sanderson, and that is Mistborn Era 1. And there are plenty of reasons why you should start here. The premise is, what if the good guys lost? What if there was some hero destined to save the world, and right before that, the villain won? Then fast forward 1,000 years, and what does the world look like? The first book follows a thieving crew on a heist to rob from the Lord Ruler. It's a great series and a well-plotted trilogy. You will have answers from the first book being answered in the third book that you didn't even think to ask. He wrote all 3 books before publishing any of them, so it's all plotted together very well. Additionally, what makes Mistborn so unique is that it's composed of multiple eras. Once you finish Era 1, you can hop over to Era 2, which takes place on the same planet just 300 years later. And Era 3, which Brandon Sanderson is currently writing, takes place around 80 years after Era 2. Era 1 is the foundation of religion in Era 2, which is the foundation of technology for Era 3. Mistborn is full of great characters and an amazing magic system. Later in the video, I'm going to give you recommendations on what to read between Era 1 and 2, but you should be all set right now to start with Era 1. The 4th book I would recommend you can start with is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. If you are an artist, it doesn't matter what kind of artist, you need to read this book. If you do anything creative, you need to read this book. It follows 2 different protagonists. One, a painter who, they're essentially soldiers in a world that have no sun, and the other is a girl selected by the spirits, but wanting to see if there's anything more to life. It is Sanderson's best attempt at a romance, and it's a great standalone. The two protagonists are from different planets, and there's a whole mystery about why the events of the book are happening. It's a really good read. While there isn't like one specific book you should read before this, it would help to have a basic understanding of how the Cosmere works. Luckily for you, I made a Cosmere 101 video which will teach you all the background information that you should know before this book. It should be in the top corner, whatever corner it is. The only thing that you'll miss out on is there's one or two instances of something really convenient happening, kind of out of nowhere, but it is an established thing / ability that happens in the Cosmere. Also, the book is narrated by Hoyd, a character who appears in every Cosmere book, and he is telling the story to people from the Stormlight Archive, which doesn't really matter, except the narration will say they have similar skin tones to the Vadens, and you're like, I don't know who the Vadens are, but just use context clues and you'll be fine. This is my third favorite book in the Cosmere, and it's also a standalone story. Fifth book I recommend starting with is Tress of the Emerald Sea. Take Princess Bride and mix it with Mark Rober's Sand Hot Tub video. Maybe sprinkle in some pirates as seasoning, and boom, Tress of the Emerald Sea. It's just a whimsical little journey, and it's really fun and really wholesome. If you read Elantris before this, you'll pick up on some fun details, but genuinely it is not required. This book is also narrated by Hoyd, a character who appears in every Cosmere story. You also might want to check out my Cosmere 101 video for this book, but it's not as important as it is for Yumi. And lastly, if you're like, I don't got time to read, I'm not a nerd, well, boy oh boy do I have the best bang for your buck. Pick up Arcanum Unbounded and read the short story The Emperor's Soul. It is a story of a girl, Shai, who is given 100 days to help heal the Emperor after receiving an injury that basically makes him brain dead. She's able to change the past of items and even people using a magic system called soul stamping, which is way too awesome to get into right now, but oh, it's so cool. Jasonian worded the theme of the book the best. It really is a beautiful story. Also, while you pick up Arcanum Unbounded, read Shadow of Silence in the Forest of Hell. It's my favorite short story in the Cosmere and also a really good starting point. Emperor's Soul is just more well known and has more Cosmere significance. All right, so pick your book and start. There is no wrong way to do this. Again, just read this one last. If you pick up any series, feel free to read it the whole way through or hop around a bit. It does not matter. Now I'm gonna get into general guidelines of what you need to read before certain books in the Cosmere. If you're gonna end up reading the whole Stormlight Archive, again, I am going to recommend reading Warbreaker, preferably early on. It's not required and will not affect the plot, but it is fun to recognize those characters when they come up. Plus, Warbreaker is just great. Also, make sure to read the Cosmere novellas Edge Dancer and Dawn Shard between books 2 and 3 and books 3 and 4 respectively. For Mistborn, there is a novella called Mistborn Secret History. I cannot tell you what this is about without giving massive spoilers, but it is a really good read. But when should you read it? I'm a firm believer that if you're going to go straight from Era 1 into Era 2, read Secret History after Bands of Mourning, which is the third book in Era 2. However, if you're going to take a break and read anything else between the eras, read Secret History once you finish Era 1. Additionally, for The Lost Metal, the last book in Era 2, I highly recommend reading Elantris and The Emperor's Soul. Honestly, you can read these two books between the eras or after Bands of Mourning, it doesn't matter too much, but just make sure you have them read before The Lost Metal, because I can't tell you, but just do it. If you're like, I only want to read one, then just read The Emperor's Soul. That one is more important and shorter. Before The Sunlit Man, you'll want to have read at least the first 3 books of Stormlight Archive, but honestly, you should probably read the first 5 because there are some Wind and Truth spoilers in here. Also, the Dawn Shard novella, at least Era 1 of Mistborn, Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell, and additionally, it helps to have some Warbreaker knowledge. So, basically everything. Era 1 of Mistborn is not required for the Stormlight Archive, but once you get into books 4 and 5, having some of that knowledge does help, but not required at all. Other than what I just mentioned, any connection you will see in the Cosmere is essentially just an Easter egg, or the reveal would be just as powerful reading it the opposite way, so I won't mention it here. I personally started with the Stormlight Archive, and if you want to do that, don't let anyone else tell you you need to read 5 books before you start. Just jump into it. If you have any questions about what you specifically should read next, head over to my Discord and plenty of people will be there to help you out spoiler free. Hey, and shout out to my patron Mac. For supporting the channel, it means the absolute world to me, and I can't wait to show you what I have in store for patrons. Other than the horrible book series I wrote in first grade, but that was fun to share with you. Link to the Patreon will also be down in the description below. Subscribe! Okay, bye.